I still remember the exact moment they stopped listening to me, not because I was wrong, but because I was just an old woman. If I could go back, I would have told them that age doesn't make you invisible, it just makes people underestimate how much you've seen. My name is Margaret Collins, and I'm 62 years old. I live in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, where maple trees line the streets and everyone pretends they know each other better than they actually do. But what happened inside my own family was anything but quiet. It started after my husband passed away. The house we built together suddenly felt too big, too empty, too full of memories that no one else seemed to respect. That's when my daughter, Emily, and my son-in-law, Jason, decided they should help me manage things. At first, I was grateful. I thought it was love. They moved into my home, temporarily. Jason started speaking in my meetings with the bank. Emily began handling my mail, my bills, even my doctor appointments. Slowly, without me noticing, my life started slipping through my fingers like sand. And then came the day they gathered in my living room, with a tone I'll never forget. "Mom," Emily said softly, like she was talking to a child, "you don't really understand financial decisions anymore. We think it's better if we take full control of everything." Jason didn't even look at me when he added, "It's for your own good." I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because I genuinely thought they were joking. But they weren't. From that moment, I wasn't part of decisions about my own house, my own accounts, my own future. Every time I spoke, I was interrupted with polite smiles and that same dismissive line. "Mom, you don't need to worry about this." That sentence started to follow me everywhere like a shadow. But what they didn't know was that I had spent my entire life working in ways they never bothered to ask about. Quiet work, private work, work that built something they never expected. And one evening, while I sat alone in my kitchen listening to them discuss my declining judgment in the next room, I made a decision. I would stay silent a little longer. Because silence, I realized, is sometimes the most powerful thing an underestimated woman can use. And they were about to find out exactly why. After that night, something in my home changed completely. It was no longer my home in the way it used to be. It became a place where I had to ask permission to live in my own space. Emily started referring to decisions as "we already handled it," even when I had never been consulted. Jason installed new locks on the office door for security reasons, but I noticed something else too. The documents inside were no longer meant for my eyes. My bank statements started arriving late. My mail was suddenly organized into piles I was not allowed to touch. Even my phone calls became suspicious to them. If I spoke too long, Emily would gently suggest I was getting overwhelmed. At family dinners, they would talk around me, not to me. "Mom doesn't really need to stress about numbers," Jason would say, smiling at guests like he was protecting me from myself. And every smile felt like a quiet dismissal. The worst part wasn't the control. It was how natural they made it seem. Even my neighbors began treating me differently after Emily casually mentioned I was slowing down a bit lately. That phrase followed me to the grocery store, to church, even to the local pharmacy in Columbus, where people used to greet me warmly. Now they spoke slowly to me, like I might not understand. But I understood everything. I just stopped correcting them, because I started noticing something they didn't expect me to notice. Late at night, Jason would take calls in the garage. Emily would hide documents quickly when I entered rooms. And once, while cleaning the kitchen, I saw a folder left open on the counter with my name on it. Inside were financial transfers, property discussions, even conversations about future decisions if her condition worsens. My condition. According to them, I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. But the truth was simpler and far more dangerous for them. I had spent years working as a legal assistant before I retired. I understood signatures. I understood authority. And I understood exactly what it meant when someone slowly tries to remove your control while calling it care. That night, I sat in my bedroom, listening to them laugh downstairs like everything was normal. And for the first time, I smiled too. Because I realized something important. They weren't protecting me. They were preparing something. And I finally knew I had to start preparing as well. I didn't confront them immediately. Instead, I started collecting everything quietly. Every document they thought I didn't understand, I understood. Every signature they assumed I wouldn't notice, I traced. Every late-night phone call Jason made in the garage, I began recording the patterns, the timing, the inconsistencies. And slowly, the truth formed into something sharp enough to cut through their control. They weren't just managing my life. They were trying to take it. One morning, Emily came into my room holding a stack of papers and that same rehearsed, gentle voice. "Mom, we think it's best if we make things official," she said. "Power of attorney. Just so we can handle everything without stressing you." Jason stood behind her, arms crossed, confident. They thought I would finally agree. They thought I had already been worn down enough to surrender. That was the moment I stood up. Not loudly, not dramatically, just firmly. "No," I said. The room went silent in a way I had never heard before. Emily blinked. "Mom, don't make this difficult." But I wasn't making anything difficult. I was ending something that should have never started. I walked to the drawer beside my bed and placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of every document they had tried to hide, every transaction I had tracked, and every inconsistency I had carefully recorded over weeks. Jason laughed at first, a short, dismissive sound, until I said the next words. "I worked in legal documentation for 27 years, I told them calmly. "And everything you've done has a paper trail." The color drained from his face as I explained how the unauthorized account changes, the missing disclosures, and the property discussions without my consent weren't just unethical, they were legally actionable. Emily's hands started shaking. For the first time, she looked at me not as a fragile old woman but as someone she had completely misunderstood. "I didn't want to believe my own children would reduce me to a liability," I said softly. "But you didn't give me a choice." Within days, things changed faster than they ever expected. Lawyers were involved. The bank flagged irregularities. The authority they thought they had built so carefully began collapsing under the weight of actual law, and my silence turning into evidence. And when they finally moved out of my house, it was quiet.
No shouting.
No drama. Just the sound of a door closing on a life they no longer controlled. Weeks later, I sat on my porch in Columbus, watching the same maple trees sway in the wind. I wasn't just an old woman they could overlook anymore. I was the truth they never bothered to understand. And sometimes that's the most powerful thing a person can become.